gunned down her ex-husband and his new wife while they slept in bed.
The woman who served 15 years in prison for helping to kidnap Elizabeth Smart.
In a world where crime often presents an alarming side of human nature, some individuals stand out for their notorious actions. Among the myriad of criminals, a number of women have etched their names in history. They were not infamous for their noble deeds or achievements, but rather for their disconcerting actions that landed them behind bars. 15 Most Dangerous Female Prisoners is an exploration into the lives of these women, who, for various reasons, took paths that led them into a life of crime. Let's journey through their stories, beginning with a well-known figure, Aileen Wuornos. Number 1. Aileen Wuornos. Aileen Wuornos, often dubbed as America's first female serial killer, had a life fraught with hardship and violence. Born in Michigan in 1956, Wuornos had a troubled childhood marred by abuse and neglect, leading her into a life of survival on the streets. In the late 1980s and early 90s, Wuornos made national headlines for her crimes. She was convicted of murdering 6 men in Florida, who she claimed had assaulted or attempted to assault her while she was working as a highway prostitute. Her modus operandi involved hitchhiking along highways and luring her victims to secluded areas where she would rob and kill them. Wuornos's trial was a spectacle, with her fluctuating claims of innocence and guilt, alongside arguments over her mental stability. Ultimately, the court found her guilty and she was sentenced to death. Her story fascinated the media and public, inspiring documentaries, films, and books. The 2003 film Monster, with Charlize Theron portraying Wuornos, is a testament to this lasting intrigue. While Wuornos's deeds were unquestionably heinous, her life offers a bleak insight into the damaging effects of a tormented upbringing, thus painting a complex portrait of a criminal whose name would become synonymous with female aggression and lethal retaliation. Aileen Wuornos's narrative is just one of many that reflect the darker side of humanity. Number 2. Mary Mallon, Typhoid Mary. Mary Mallon, better known as Typhoid Mary, stands as an unusual case in the annals of crime. Her story unfolds not on the streets or in dark corners, but within the seemingly safe bounds of domestic kitchens. Mallon was an Irish immigrant who came to the United States in the late 19th century. She worked as a cook for various wealthy families in New York, a job that proved to be more than ordinary due to the deadly bacteria she unknowingly carried. Mallon was an asymptomatic carrier of Salmonella typhi, the bacteria that causes typhoid fever. Between 1900 and 1907, families for whom she cooked experienced outbreaks of the disease. It wasn't until 1906, when a sanitary engineer named George Soper tracked these outbreaks back to Mallon, that her deadly impact was discovered. She was forcibly quarantined in 1907 on North Brother Island, near New York City. Dubbed as Typhoid Mary by the press, Mallon's story took a tragic turn. Despite her protests of innocence and her own healthy condition, she remained a carrier of the deadly disease, making her a threat to public health. Following a brief release during which she caused further outbreaks, she was quarantined once again in 1915 and remained in isolation until her death in 1938. Mallon's tale is a chilling reminder of the unseen dangers that lurk in our midst, the stealthy foes that don't need a gun or knife to wreak havoc, but use the microscopic world to unleash terror. Though she was not a criminal in the conventional sense, her case continues to be a point of study for ethical debates in public health. Number 3. Griselda Blanco. Griselda Blanco, also known as the godmother of cocaine, was one of the key figures in the Medellin cartel, a major drug trafficking organization that terrorized the world in the late 20th century. Born in Cartagena, Colombia, Blanco's journey into the world of crime began at an early age and escalated into a reign of terror that marked her as one of the most dangerous women of her time. Blanco moved to the United States in the mid-1970s, settling in Queens, New York. There, she established a substantial cocaine business, a feat previously unheard of for a woman in the male-dominated underworld of drug trafficking. Her brutal tactics, including the use of motorcycle assassins, earned her a fearsome reputation. In 1985, Blanco was arrested in California on drug charges and spent nearly 2 decades in a U.S. prison. Upon her release in 2004, she was deported to Colombia. Blanco was credited with inventing the concept of the motorcycle assassin, where killers would zoom up to their targets on bikes, execute them, and speed away. Her ruthlessness extended to her personal life as well, with accusations of eliminating 3 of her husbands. On a fateful day in 2012, Blanco's past caught up with her when she was assassinated by a motorcycle gunman in Colombia, falling victim to the same modus operandi she had once championed. Her life and death serve as a grim reminder of the lawless and brutal world of drug trafficking, a world where violence begets violence and peace is often just a lull before the storm. Number 4. Ma Barker, Arizona. Donnie Barker, commonly known as Ma Barker, is a name etched in American criminal history as the matriarch of the notorious Barker-Karpus gang that ran rampant during the Public Enemy era of the 1930s. Born in 1873 in Missouri, Ma Barker led an ordinary life until her 4 sons grew up to become infamous criminals, engaging in a spree of robberies, kidnappings, and murders. Contrary to popular belief, Ma Barker was not the mastermind behind the gang's operations. The depiction of her as the gang's leader and strategist was primarily the work of the media and the FBI, looking for a gripping narrative. However, she was known to harbor her criminal sons, showing support for their activities. The Barker-Karpus gang's crime spree came to a bloody end in 1935 when the FBI tracked Ma Barker and her son Fred to a cottage in Florida. After a 4-hour-long shootout, both were found dead inside. The legend of Ma Barker continues to persist, presenting an image of a ruthless matriarch leading her sons down a path of crime. This image, whether real or exaggerated, places her in the annals of criminal history as one of the most notorious women of her era. Number 5. Myra Hindley. The name Myra Hindley is associated with some of the most heinous crimes in British history. Alongside her partner Ian Brady, Hindley was responsible for the Moors murders, a series of child killings that horrified the nation in the mid-1960s. Born in 1942 in Manchester, Hindley was a regular woman leading an ordinary life until she met Brady. Under Brady's influence, Hindley transformed into a cold-hearted accomplice in a string of gruesome crimes. Between 1963 and 1965, Hindley and Brady lured, tortured, and killed 5 children, burying their bodies on the Saddleworth Moor near Manchester. The discovery of these crimes sent shockwaves across the country, marking Hindley as the most evil woman in Britain. Hindley was arrested in 1965 and, after a high-profile trial, was sentenced to life imprisonment. Despite several appeals for parole and claims of having reformed, she remained behind bars until her death in 2002. The chilling tale of Myra Hindley serves as a stark reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the ordinary, leaving behind a legacy of fear and a name that would forever be associated with unfathomable evil. Number 6. Rosemary West. When one mentions Rosemary West, it invariably conjures a sense of dread. Alongside her husband, Fred West, she was involved in a series of shocking crimes that unfolded in the quiet city of Gloucester, England. This seemingly average couple was behind some of the most abhorrent crimes in British history, their names forever linked with a house of horrors at 25 Cromwell Street. Rosemary Letts was born in 1953 into a troubled family. Her turbulent upbringing, marked by issues of mental health and abuse, seemingly set the stage for the horrific path she would later walk alongside Fred West. They married in 1972, and their life together would soon spiral into a cycle of depravity that shocked the nation. From the outside, the Wests appeared to be an ordinary working-class family. Yet behind the facade lay a grim reality. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, they carried out a series of abductions, tortures, and murders. Their victims, 12 in known total, were often young women and girls, including their own children. The true extent of the West's horrifying crimes was only revealed in 1994 when police excavated their residence at Cromwell Street. They discovered multiple sets of human remains, bearing signs of gruesome torture. The nation was horrified as the details of the West's monstrous acts came to light. To this day, Rosemary West remains one of the UK's most infamous female criminals. Her name is synonymous with a level of evil that is rarely seen, a chilling reminder of the atrocities that can occur behind closed doors. The legacy of Rosemary West will forever be entwined with Cromwell Street, a grim symbol of a darkness that lurked beneath the surface of everyday life. Number 7. Karla Homolka. Karla Homolka, often referred to as the Ken and Barbie killer, alongside her then-husband, Paul Bernardo, are figures of infamy in Canadian criminal history. Their appalling crimes in the early 1990s would leave a lasting mark, a grim testament to the human capacity for evil. Born in 1970 in Ontario, Canada, Homolka had an ordinary middle-class upbringing. Her life took a dark turn when she met Paul Bernardo, and the pair embarked on a crime spree that involved a series of sexual assaults and murders. One of the most shocking aspects of Homolka's story was her involvement in the crimes against her younger sister, Tammy Homolka. She and Bernardo drugged and assaulted Tammy, who tragically died in the process. This gruesome event marked the beginning of their criminal activities, which escalated over the next couple of years. The couple's victims were often young girls, whom they would abduct, torture, and kill. Their heinous acts came to light in 1993, when Bernardo was arrested for a series of rapes in the Scarborough area of Ontario. The subsequent police investigation unearthed the horrific truth about the couple's other crimes. Homolka's trial was a media sensation, with a controversial plea deal at its center. She received a 12-year sentence in exchange for her testimony against Bernardo. The prosecution painted her as a victim of Bernardo's abuse, who had been forced into complicity, a portrayal that was later called into question when more damning evidence of her involvement emerged. The story of Karla Homolka serves as a harsh reminder that evil deeds can stem from the most unexpected sources, proving that appearances can indeed be deceptive. Her tale of infamy, despite its grim nature, continues to fascinate and horrify, a dark chapter in the annals of crime. Number 8. Beverly Allett. Beverly Allett, a name that inspires dread within the medical profession and beyond, was a pediatric nurse who used her position of trust to carry out a series of chilling crimes. Referred to as the Angel of Death, Allett was responsible for a disturbing crime spree that unfolded over a mere 59 days, but left a trail of devastation in its wake. Born in 1968 in Lincolnshire, England, Allett had an unremarkable early life. She trained as a nurse and by 1991 was employed at the Grantham and Kesteven Hospital in Lincolnshire. It was there that her series of horrifying crimes began. Between February and April 1991, an alarming number of children under Allett's care started to fall mysteriously ill. Their conditions would inexplicably worsen, resulting in cardiac arrest or other severe symptoms. Some tragically did not survive. In total, Allett attacked 13 children, 4 of whom died as a result of her actions. It took some time before suspicions fell on Allett. When a high number of incidents were traced back to her shifts, an investigation was launched. A review of the hospital's records revealed an unsettling pattern, and evidence started to mount against Allett. She was arrested in November 1991. Allett's trial began in 1993, and she was convicted on 13 counts, including 4 murders, 3 attempted murders, and 6 counts of causing grievous bodily harm. She was sentenced to life imprisonment. It was later suggested that she suffered from Munchausen syndrome by proxy, a psychiatric disorder causing an individual to inflict harm on others to attract attention or sympathy. Beverly Allett's story has had lasting implications for the medical profession, leading to improved monitoring and safety procedures in hospitals. Her actions, a stark betrayal of trust, shocked the nation and transformed her into one of Britain's most notorious female criminals. Her tale serves as a grim reminder that those who are charged with the responsibility of caring for the most vulnerable in society can sometimes be the ones to pose the greatest threat. Despite the passage of time, the memory of the Angel of Death continues to cast a dark shadow, a chilling legacy of a caregiver turned killer. Number 9. Betty Broderick. Betty Broderick is a figure who looms large in American crime history, her name synonymous with a highly publicized case of marital discord that culminated in a shocking act of violence. The story of Betty Broderick illustrates the potentially devastating consequences of a bitter divorce and the dark descent into obsession and rage. Elizabeth Ann Betty Broderick was born in 1947 in New York. She married Daniel T. Broderick III in 1969, and they moved to San Diego, California, where they became prominent figures in the local social scene. Together they had 4 children, and for a time they seemed to lead an idyllic life. However, cracks began to appear in the perfect facade. Daniel began an affair with his legal assistant, Linda Kolkina. When Betty found out about the affair, it led to an acrimonious and drawn-out divorce that was finalized in 1989. The divorce process was marked by fierce legal battles and public mudslinging that painted a picture of a family torn apart. The tumultuous divorce sent Betty spiraling down a path of anger and resentment. Unable to come to terms with the end of her marriage, she became increasingly consumed by her ex-husband's relationship with Linda, who he eventually married. Betty Broderick's story resonated with the public and sparked conversations about divorce, mental health, and domestic abuse. It remains one of the most infamous cases in American legal history, a stark example of how intense personal emotions can escalate into lethal violence. The case of Betty Broderick serves as a chilling reminder of the thin line between love and hate, and the dangerous precipice at which obsession stands. Number 10. Wanda Barzee. Wanda Barzee, a name intrinsically linked with one of the most high-profile kidnappings in recent American history, is known for her role in the abduction of Elizabeth Smart in 2002. Her involvement in this shocking crime marked her as a dangerous figure, a stark contrast to her otherwise unassuming life. Born in 1945, Barzee had a troubled history marked by mental health issues. In the 1980s, she met Brian David Mitchell, a street preacher, and fell under his sway. Their shared delusions would eventually culminate in the abduction of Elizabeth Smart, a 14-year-old girl from Salt Lake City, Utah. For 9 months, Smart was held captive and subjected to repeated abuse. Barzee's complicity in these heinous acts made her an equally guilty party in this chilling crime. The ordeal ended in March 2003 when Smart was rescued, and Barzee and Mitchell were arrested. Barzee was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison in 2010, after pleading guilty to charges of kidnapping and unlawful transportation of a minor. Her role in this high-profile crime marked her as one of the most infamous female criminals in America. Number 11. Martha Stewart. Martha Stewart, a household name associated with domestic arts and a successful media empire, is an unlikely figure to find on a list of notorious criminals. Yet, Stewart found herself at the center of a high-profile insider trading scandal in 2004 that would significantly tarnish her reputation. In 2001, Stewart sold stock in a biopharmaceutical company called ImClone Systems based on non-public material information. When the company's stock plunged the next day, Stewart avoided a loss of approximately $45,673. This action, although financially minor compared to her net worth, constituted insider trading, a serious federal offense. The case against Stewart was built on her deceptive practices during the investigation, rather than the trade itself. Stewart was charged with conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and making false statements to federal investigators. In 2004, she was found guilty and sentenced to 5 months in prison, 5 months of home confinement, and 2 years of supervised release. The Martha Stewart case captivated the nation, largely due to her celebrity status. It served as a stark reminder that no one, regardless of their wealth or fame, is immune to the consequences of breaking the law. Number 12. Andrea Yates. Andrea Yates, a name associated with an unimaginably tragic crime, is known for the heartbreaking events of June 20, 2001, when she drowned her 5 young children in the bathtub of their home in Houston, Texas. Her case spurred a nationwide discussion about postpartum depression and the intersection of mental illness and criminal justice. Before this horrifying incident, Yates seemed to lead an ordinary life. She was a registered nurse and a dedicated mother, but those close to her knew she battled severe postpartum depression and psychosis after the birth of her children. Despite hospitalizations and medications, her mental health continued to decline. The morning of the tragedy, Yates waited until her husband left for work, then systematically drowned all 5 of her children. Afterward, she called the police and her husband, admitting to her actions. Her trial gained national attention with debates over whether she was competent to stand trial and whether her severe mental illness should factor into her guilt or innocence. In 2002, Yates was initially convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison. The focus on her mental health, however, led to a retrial in 2006, where she was found not guilty by reason of insanity. She was committed to a mental health facility where she remains today. The case of Andrea Yates put the spotlight on the seriousness of postpartum depression and psychosis, leading to increased awareness and advocacy for better mental health care for new mothers. Number 13. Sarah Macon. Sarah Macon, along with her husband John, is known for a series of shocking crimes that took place in the late 19th century in Sydney, Australia. The Macons were baby farmers, a term used for those who provided foster care for payment, but their operation had a sinister twist. The couple advertised their services to care for unwanted babies, often born to unwed mothers. However, rather than provide care, they moved from house to house, leaving behind the tiny bodies of infants they'd murdered. The grim discovery of 2 infant corpses in the backyard of a former Macon residence led to an investigation. As police started digging, literally and figuratively, the horror of the Macons' crimes came to light. More bodies were found in the backyards of homes the Macons had occupied. In total, 13 infants were linked to the couple, although the true number of victims remains unknown. In 1893, the Macons were charged with murder. Their trial caused a sensation in Australia and abroad, revealing the shocking underbelly of the baby farming industry. Both Sarah and John were found guilty and sentenced to death, but Sarah's sentence was later commuted to life imprisonment. The case of Sarah Macon highlighted the vulnerability of children in an era before effective social services, leading to changes in child welfare practices. It remains one of the most chilling chapters in Australian criminal history. Number 14. Belle Gunness. Belle Gunness, also known as the Lady Bluebeard, holds a notorious place in American criminal history. An immigrant from Norway, she settled in the Midwest in the late 19th century and went on to commit a series of crimes that have since cemented her status as one of the country's most chilling female killers. Born in 1859 in Selbu, Norway, Gunness emigrated to the U.S. in 1881. She initially lived in Chicago, where she married Mads Sorensen in 1884. The couple had 2 children and ran a candy store. However, a series of misfortunes, including the death of their children and a fire that destroyed their store, led to suspicions about Gunness. In 1908, a fire destroyed Gunness's farmhouse. Among the ruins, authorities found the bodies of several individuals, including Gunness's children. A decapitated woman, initially presumed to be Gunness, was also discovered, but discrepancies in body size led to doubts about her alleged death. The subsequent search of the property revealed multiple hidden graves, each containing mutilated remains. In total, Gunness is believed to have killed at least 14 people, though some estimates suggest the count could be as high as 40. Her precise fate remains unknown, with some believing she perished in the fire and others suspecting she faked her own death to escape justice. The tale of Belle Gunness remains one of the most chilling narratives of premeditated murder in American history. The horror of her actions is magnified by the fact that she used the traditional female roles of wife and caregiver as a cover for her heinous deeds, casting a dark shadow over the seemingly idyllic Midwestern landscape. Number 15. Velma Barfield. Velma Barfield, known as the Death Row Granny, was an American serial killer whose crimes shocked the nation in the late 1970s. As the first woman executed in the United States after the reinstatement of the death penalty in 1976, Barfield's case continues to attract attention decades after her death. Born in 1932 in South Carolina, Barfield grew up in a tumultuous home marked by domestic violence and poverty. In 1949, she married Thomas Burke, and the couple had 2 children. This seemingly normal life, however, was riddled with problems, including Barfield's escalating addiction to prescription drugs. Her spiral into criminality began with the mysterious deaths of her loved ones. First, Her husband, Thomas Burke, died suddenly in 1969, followed by her second husband, Jennings Barfield, in 1971. Both deaths were initially attributed to natural causes. However, suspicions arose when more people in Barfield's life began to fall mysteriously ill and die, including her mother and two elderly people she cared for. The case of Velma Barfield, the kindly-looking grandmother figure who was a ruthless killer, challenged public perceptions about who could be capable of such monstrous acts. Her execution by lethal injection in 1984 marked the end of her tragic and destructive journey. But the legacy of her crimes continues to linger as a grim reminder of the potential for evil that can lurk beneath the most ordinary facades. Her story also highlights the devastating effects of substance addiction and the urgent need for better mental health interventions in the justice system.